Welcome to Theories at Dawn. Today we'll be discussing Return to the 36 Chambers by ODB. Let's get into it. Imagine if you asked Rico from Penguins of Madagascar what it means to be a crime-fighting flightless bird. What kind of response would you receive from the most explosive, vociferous, and unhinged Rough Rider of the Brotherly Collective? Unfortunately, those of us in the real world do not have such access to the all-too-familiar universe of DreamWorks animation, and cannot directly petition the answer from Rico himself. However, wouldn't it be fun to think about the radically different ways a singular mantra can be realized within a group? Today's theory will attempt to do just this. We don't have Rico in the gang, but we do have the hip-hop equivalent, the explosive, vociferous, and unhinged member of the Wu Tang Clan. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome ODB.
Shame on you when you stepped up to the old dirty bastard, Brooklyn.
Let's get into it. ODB's debut album, Return to the 36 Chambers, is such a rare jewel from the Wu's larger discography because it shows a more raw, unrefined, and unforgiving imagination of the urban Shaolin warrior mystique outside of the Liquid Swords comic book vibe that so heavily defined their movement. The tracks largely approximate the weaknesses in the Wu armor founded in human nature. These are bodily temptations, drugs, etc. And it also shows from ODB's perspective how they can be embraced. From here on out, this video will be split into two separate parts that each serve to support this thesis. First, I'm going to explain the title and cover art. Second, I'm going to analyze the lyrics and other songwriting liberties taken on this album. The album's title, Return to the 36 Chambers, in classic Wu Tang tradition comes from a prior kung fu flick of the same name. In it, protagonist Jen Che pretends to be a famous kung fu master and attempts to muscle his bosses into paying his co-workers him fairly. This does not work, as he does not look like a kung fu master, and neither can he pass as one. After he is found out, Jen Che spends the rest of the movie attempting to learn kung fu the right way, and ends up finding the guy who he was pretending to be. Towards the end, the master expels the student, but has trouble doing so because of his newly learned technique. He smiles subtly, acknowledging that the imposter is no longer. Both the audience and Jen Che realizes this after the person he was pretending to be sends him this signal. Jen Che uses the skills acquired in training to accomplish his original goals of obtaining equal pay for him and his coworkers. But this conclusion is not important. What really matters for our purposes is that Sante, the identity Jen Che assumes, is meant to symbolize how people traditionally perceive a status. Whether that status be kung fu master, rapper, or anything else that somebody can have an opinion on. It really just goes to show how different statuses can have different strengths. ODB flows outside the parameters of your typical MC, so in his time, the public understandably might have diminished his role and significance to the group because of his unorthodox style again. Now, these echo sentiments people now tend to hold against U-God. But as Jen Che proved Sante and company wrong, Return to the 36 Chambers, the CD that is meant to show that ODB can be just as dominant as Method Man, Ghostface Killah, and the rest of the crew. And furthermore, the title shows that ODB's output embodies the Wu-Tang ethos of brotherhood and innovative swordplay as well. Moving on to the cover art, then this buttresses the claim that the Wu are invincible superheroes that you can fit into one RZA cinematic box, as ODB's face sits in the top left-hand corner of an EBT card, which are food stamps. This references the fact that while still being a prominent MC and member of one of the most acclaimed hip-hop collectives of all time, at least when the album was being made, ODB was still on food stamps, a point he later corroborates rather directly on the album's 6th track, Raw High, when he says,
MC, I came on my mama pussy, I'm on welfare, 26 years old.
still on welfare. Speaking of the contents of the album, let's break down how the primal side of one of the darkest rap groups this side of the Ghetto Boys presents itself on Return of the 36 Chambers. In other words, let's break down the lyrics and songwriting techniques. So from the beginning, the very beginning that is, on the intro track, we see this concert setting where the audience is applauding. RZA approaches the mic and introduces ODB. Now, his message serves as a disclaimer to the world when he says, quote,
something that you never seen before. Something that nobody in the history of rap ever set themselves to do. This fucking guy that I speak to you about is something crazy. He's something insane. He's the greatest performer ever since, what's the guy's name? James Brown.
And this is just to show that because ODB is not what the listener is used to, just because he's not what the listener is used to, does not mean he should be dismissed. In fact, we'll, quote, really need him, end quote. According to RZA, this proves his vital role to the group's function. Of course, ODB lives up to the debaucherous expectations RZA sets when it's his turn to grab the mic. He goes on a lengthy tirade about how he killed a girl that gave him a sexually transmitted infection for the second time. However, the first substantial thing that he says is,
I wanted y'all to know that tonight is a special night because I'm happy to be living. You know, nigga try to shoot me down and shit, you know, and I don't know, man. It just feel good to be here, man. You know what I'm saying? And I want to let all y'all know.
This is the first proof we get that despite his wild antics, ODB still lives the same lives as his comrades and has come out a wiser man in their spite. Also, this reads more like the ecstasy of a man finally given a platform to shine and be an uncensored, unfiltered version of himself. To conclude the introduction, in true Wu Tang style, RZA appends a kung fu sample that essentially confirms ODB is an entirely different animal, saying that he embodies an undiscovered 36th chamber yet to be defined. Now, I'm not going to analyze each song individually, as that would detract from the overarching themes I would like you guys to take away from the album. So, yeah, as a result, I will structure the rest of this video in the format of larger idea and then song lyrics I can point to buttress that claim. As you will soon learn, there is one theme that is made throughout an entire song that does merit separate and further analysis, but be easy. That's a special case. Well, the first theme that I'd like to touch upon is most apparent in the album is that ODB is raw id. For those that are smart enough to not know what that means, it's famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud's way of saying that ODB is entirely motivated by biological drives, hormones, etc. This is an obvious motif that starts in the intro track when he talks about contracting the sexually transmitted infection for the second time, but then on the very next track, entitled Shimmy Shimmy Ya, still discussing how he, quote, likes it raw, end quote. As a matter of fact, RZA's Wu Tang manual defines shimmy succinctly as, going back to the idea of id and biological drives, the second bar on the album and first words after Give Me the Mic is, quote, off on a natural charge, bon voyage, end quote. The natural part of this charge, this endeavor, it's really stating the thesis of the id, in it being natural and all instinctual, ladies and gentlemen. And the introduction to the next song after Shimmy Shimmy Ya is him talking about receiving. And then the track after that, entitled Snakes, puts him into full savage mode, where he takes the form of some hulking beast tasked with fending off the fearsome snakes of the industry, screaming and beating his chest in the process. It's a very primal and savage song. It is fittingly titled Snakes. Other tracks like The Stomp, Drunk Game, and others detail his unrestrained enjoyment of female company and other things that are driven by biological passion. Finally, or another thing that not just ODB, but all associated features attempt to do on this project is prove that he embodies the Wu Tang ethos. Besides many of the typical guns blasting bars appearing on the cut, making the listener feel a little more at home, there are also other members bringing in 5% of rhetoric. As Method Man's entire verse on Rawhide discusses the 85% of the dumb, deaf, and blind via Cube, positive energy, and witches that the 5%ers openly preach about when not rapping. And this reminds the audience that even ODB agrees with the belief system that the Wu Tang Clan is grounded on. Another way this is accomplished on the album is through verse sharing. This is when neither MC receives a full 16 bars to a song, but rather split the work, usually ending each other's bars in a conversation, turn-taking like manner. Now, this style was adopted in tracks Damage and Cutting Heads, and besides the fact that these decapitative allusions persist in many Wu-Tang cuts, see Guillotine Swords, and even their very first commercial single project, Protect Your Neck, the rappers who flow on these tracks, RZA and GZA, respectively, are arguably the most critical to the group's functioning. RZA is the de facto founder of the group and leader, who produced practically all of the Wu-Tang's prime collective and solo works. He also went in GZA as the cerebrum of the group, saying that if the Wu was Voltron, then GZA would be the head. Of course, it is worth mentioning that these are ODB's cousins, and he is also a founding member of the group, but these endorsements do matter, because his style is so unorthodox that it cannot be stressed enough that he is as much a disciple of the 36 Chambers as any other of the more conservative members. When GZA raps with him on Damage, he even ditches his signature cold, calm, and collected cadence for a more manic tone, matching the energy of Old Dirty. GZA, when providing an abridged version of how he met the man of the hour, ironically quotes that, quote, "I brought the punk out of him," really showing the effect Dirt McGirt had on him. And the most telling line, however, from that song is when ODB lobs up the line, "Can't understand it, here's the panorama." And then GZA throws it down with a complete view of how I defeat you. His point is that predictable, one-dimensional Shaolin assassins are simply too simple to defeat the enemy. The group needs a holistic approach, completeness. Every aspect, every style of every chamber needs to be covered in order to leave victorious. RZA says as much in his verse share when discussing the viability of the very real and lethal drunken fighting style that ODB so personifies. Now, to conclude, I would like to end with the geographic ties of this album to the Wu Tang mythology. The events of this album take place in the Brooklyn Zoo, Wu Tang for the borough of Brooklyn, the homes of both GZA and Master Killa. The city not only appears as on the cover art, but it is also mentioned extensively in two tracks named after it, Brooklyn Zoo and Brooklyn Zoo 2. The Brooklyn Zoo is actually across the water from Shaolin, as in real life Shaolin is modern day Staten Island. However, these are all mythical provinces of the Wu dynasty, showing Old Dirty's pure heritage. And also rebuts the claim that many make, equating Shaolin to modern day New York, when in reality, it's simply Staten Island. Well, that's all you need to know about the return to the 36 Chambers. This is the first of a series of videos we here at Theories at Dawn are producing with the Wu Tang Clan. So if you have any suggestions about lore, themes, and personas that you would like to see in the near future, about your favorite Shaolin warriors, then subscribe and drop a comment below. This has been a Theory at Dawn. Good night.
Oh,